Okay. As I was saying, I will try to present a little bit about the journey we've had in Sneeggen for getting support for OpenID Connect into our products. I am Dag Sneeggen, 37 years old. I'm born and raised in Trondheim, which is where that we had hoped to have the presentation physically. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Sneeggen is also based in Trondheim. And I'm currently running a team in Sneeggen. I'm the product owner for a team called Team OAuth, which does all the authentication and authorization stuff in our company. So what do we do? I had to explain this to a non-IT person the other day, and basically what we do is we deal with protocols, and the protocols are like languages. People agree upon how to speak and communicate. So what we do is we allow you to use the language you choose, and behind the scenes we translate back and forth between a number of different languages. On a more technical level, what we do is we provide an EID hub which authenticates real-life persons using strong EIDs. And when we started back in 2008, I believe it was, we offered SAML 1 because that was the kind of hottest and latest language. And later we added SAML 2. And finally, we also added OpenID Connect. As you can see, we have quite a lot of traffic, so making changes to the system can always be a little bit risky. In 2017, as I said, we had SAML 1 and SAML 2, and a few people in the company were championing adding OIDC support. So eventually there was a project made where a few key people worked there. Why did we add it at the time? Maybe we were a little bit late, but it was still an emergent technology, and there was a lot of demand from customers. And we also saw that we could use OAuth internally. And we did it at the time by making a homebrewed Java solution that used a lot of libraries, but it made a lot from scratch. And there was a few developers that had a passion for it that drove the development. And it was integrated into our existing systems. And at the time, we felt that it was performing well, it was secure, and the customers appeared to be happy. But of course, we realized that there were some problems eventually. We were over-reliant on expertise from key people, and it was complicated to maintain the solution. And we had some missing functionality as well, which brings me to the other issues of expertise and understanding. So there were some specific problems we found due to the OpenID Connect and OAuth protocols, because when you create something from scratch, you have to be extremely aware of how you implement things. We found customers asking tricky questions like, why did you implement X like this and not like this? And why don't you support this particular edge case? Or why is this returning such and such error and not a different type of error code? So there were a lot of tricky kind of almost defending our solution and the way that we implemented it. So I would argue actually that when you do a custom made from scratch solution, it requires a deeper understanding. So fast forward to 2019, we took some action. At the time, I had been with the company for a year or two, and we had to do something. So I was put in charge of a team that had a mandate to revamp the OpenID and OIDC solution. Sorry, OpenID and OAuth solution. And I think the first thing we discovered is that there is actually a lot of options and possibilities for offering OpenID Connect and OAuth in 2020. So we set out to map our options. So you can organize all the different options here in many different ways, but I guess this was our approach for organizing things. So at the very basic, you can either buy something or you can build something. And to break it down further, I like to use a bike analogy because I'm quite fond of biking. Software as a service is a turnkey hosted managed solution with some level of configuration. It's like renting a bike every time you need it. And off the shelf is a traditional software typically installed and run on your own infrastructure or in the cloud, which would be similar to buying a ready-made bike. And a framework, I like to say it's not really a complete software, but it's not a simple library either. It's more of a platform for developing software, which I guess would be like buying pre-made parts, maybe doing a little bit of customization, but putting together the bike by yourself. And for homebrew, it would be creating something from scratch, which is what we did on our first attempt. And I think even if you build a bike from scratch, you might design it and put the parts together, perhaps even build your own wheels or frame. But there are some parts that you have to buy, like the crank or cassette or wheel hub, because they are just too complicated to make for most people. And this could be similar to using libraries for like JWT, crypto stuff, a library for HTTP or REST. It's not typically something that people enjoy making themselves. Now we'll look at a couple of options for software. It's a quick and dirty illustration of some of the common software available today. And they are very roughly placed, and it's in no way exhaustive, so you can take it for what it is. But you have all the big hitters like Auth0, Ping, Keycloak, IdentityServer, plus some smaller actors like Ori, Hydra, and Glue, and OneGenie. But having a kind of buffet like this is nice, but how do you actually choose? So I created some illustrations of some key parameters when comparing the different approaches. The direction of the arrows shows the increased level, and red means worse and green means better. And also note that the gradients will vary. But knowing this is only half the battle. The more difficult matter is deciding the importance of each metrics for your needs, which is unfortunately not something I can help you with. But let's have a look at the different criteria. These first three metrics, I would say that rank worse for SaaS and off-the-shelf and better for frameworks and homebrewed. So control of your solution, I mean, how much do you own the solution? Do you host it? Do you control the SLA, the delivery model, the security, etc., etc.? Definitely less control on the SaaS than off the shelf and much more on frameworks and homebrewed. The external cost, I mean cost that you don't control, initial investment, licensing, software cost, any type of external usage cost. And the same, it's worse on SaaS, because obviously you have more costs on using the service. Flexibility and customization means how much you can change the solution to fit your needs. And if you remember our first attempt in 2017, we had identified lack of flexibility, but this should be higher on homebrewed. But the reality is that it doesn't matter if you have theoretical flexibility if you don't understand the protocols and the solution sufficiently, and you have an architecture that make changes possible. So this kind of brings us nicely into the next three. which I would say are better for SaaS and off the shelf and worse for frameworks and homebrewed solutions. The need for expertise is probably quite important. I would say if you use a SaaS software, you don't necessarily need so much expertise on the protocols and the theory. But on homebrew, it puts a lot more demand on the people supporting it. And the time to feature complete means how long it will take you competitively to have a solution with the features you want available for the customers. And the maintenance technical debt means the long-term cost for staffing a team of developers and experts. And you should never underestimate the cost of accruing technical debt either. And finally, there are aspects which are not so easy to map out, but they are still very important to consider. There are a lot more aspects which I could have listed, but I had to restrain myself. So the first arrow are technology related: architecture, security, scalability, reliability, resilience. And the second is more business related. How does it fit into your products? Is the people that own the solution or work on the solution, do they have financial stability? Is there an active community behind the solution? And before I move on to other things, note that there is a combined version, a single slide version of these illustrations. It's available at the presentation for those who are interested. So, what did we choose? Well, what we chose is not really the important takeaway, but the takeaway should be how we chose, not what. But I will reveal the choice, but I'm just going to go through some specific needs that we had identified for us, which made us choose what we did. And we have a high degree of customization due to fitting a vast number of EIDs. And we needed to control our situation quite tightly to satisfy customers and the high SLA, etc. And we had to assure a correct implementation without being bogged down in the protocols. And also we have quite high demands for security and resilience and stability, etc. So for us, we chose IdentityServer. It gave us the right control, customization and features without having to dive into the protocols too much. But regardless of what you choose, I think there are some challenges, at least that we found when implementing OpenID Connect and OAuth in 2020. Specifically for us, we are a company that has a lot of Java software and a lot of Java developers, so we had to recruit some more C# developers because, of course, IdentityServer is C# based. But more in general, we actually found that it can be quite difficult to find developers who has a deep understanding of OpenID Connect and OAuth, which for me, it surprised me a little bit because I thought it would be easier in 2020, but we tried to recruit in Norway and Portugal, and it was challenging. Also, the standards can be a bit vague and ambiguous. I know that there are people working to make this as good as possible, and it is good, but you can find when you're looking through all the protocols and standards that there is a lot of them, and there's a lot of different documents, and all the documents say things that are outside of the spec that you have to decide yourself, or there are different options for how you implement things, and whatever choices you make, you have to document it for yourself and for your customers. And the handling of the personally identifying information is always tricky, and as well with the GDPR now is very much in focus, so you have to be very careful about consent management and GDPR. We also found some advantages with our approach. The standards are very mature and they are well known among customers. It's easy to implement OpenID Connect on the client side. There's a lot of libraries available for a lot of languages. And specifically for IdentityServer 4, we found that it's well documented. There's a lot of interfaces that can be extended. There's an active and helpful community, and it's quite well suited for cloud and microservice architecture today. So just for completion's sake, where are we now? We are getting ready to deploy to production. It's not fully feature complete yet, but we're getting there. And probably most important of all, we're building up a team that has OpenID Connect and OAuth expertise so that we can support the solution. So that was actually quicker than I thought, but thank you for listening, everyone. Hopefully it was helpful and informative.